Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a complicated body of source material, and today, that's the legal architecture for a national biometric database. And we just cut straight to what you need to know.
And we are really digging into a modern legal paradox today.
We are, because it's got this incredible tension built right into its core.
It does. On one hand, you have this massive, centralized, powerful identification system. But on the other, the law tries to build what might be one of the most stringent sets of privacy safeguards you can imagine.
All designed to lock down that exact same system.
Precisely.
So our source material is the law itself, the actual statutes, and our mission here is to distill how this whole system is put together. We'll focus first on what's mandatory for every single resident.
And then we'll get into the legal and technical firewalls, the multi-layered protections for this incredibly sensitive personal data once it's collected.
Exactly. We want to understand where the law forces your hand and where it slams the door shut.
It's a balance sheet, really. The high cost of centralized identity and the equally high price of keeping it constrained.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The central purpose. Why even build this?
Well, the number one stated objective is to prevent forgery, to stop the use of false identities.
So it's about identity integrity.
It is creating a definitive, basically unforgeable link between you and your official documents, your ID card, your passport. It's a response to modern fraud.
And to do that, they need a single central place to keep the data.
Right. They call it the biometric database, or Magar Habiometry. That's the vault. It's established specifically to store the biometric data they collect.
So if that's the vault, what are the keys? What specific biometric means, as the law calls them, are they gathering?
The law defines the required means as, first and foremost, the facial feature images and the data derived from them. That is the mandatory core.
Okay.
Separately, it also defines fingerprint images as a biometric mean, but, and this is a key distinction, the law treats them completely differently when it comes to long-term storage.
We will definitely get to that. And who's running this whole high-space operation? It's not just part of some other ministry, right?
No, it's a dedicated entity. The law establishes the authority for biometric database management. Let's just call them the authority.
The authority. Sounds about right.
Yeah. And they are the sole management body. They're responsible for everything. Data processing, security, maintenance. They are the gatekeepers for the whole system.
Okay, let's get to the most crucial part for anyone listening. The mandatory collection. You walk into the Ministry of Interior for a new ID. What does the law demand from you?
It's unequivocal. The law says a resident is obligated to allow authorized employees to collect their biometric identification means.
And that means both facial features and fingerprints.
Both. For the purpose of issuing the document, yes.
That sounds pretty non-negotiable. So what's the consequence if someone just says no? If, for whatever reason, they refuse to submit their biometrics?
The consequence is immediate, and it's absolute. The text is clear. If you refuse to allow the collection, then no ID document shall be issued.
Wow. So it's an all-or-nothing proposition.
Completely. If you want a valid ID, you have to go through the process.
Okay, so collection of both is mandatory just to get the process started. But now we need to talk about storage, because this is where that huge legal difference kicks in. What data is guaranteed to end up in that central database?
The facial feature images and the biometric data derived from your face. That part is not optional. It must be transferred and stored.
So if you get an ID, your face print is in the National Vault, period.
That's it. But the fingerprints, which remember they were also mandatory to collect at the counter,
Right.
their long-term storage is handled very differently.
How so?
That is entirely optional. The transfer and permanent storage of your fingerprint images and their data in the central database, that's up to you.
So wait, just to be clear, if I'm over 16, they take my fingerprints for the ID issuance process. But those prints only go into the big high-security vault if I specifically agree, in writing.
Precisely. Explicit written consent is the legal barrier. And the law takes that consent so seriously, it forces the Ministry of Interior to run a massive information campaign.
You mean just to make sure people know it's optional?
Yes.
Yeah.
They have to use video tutorials, prominent signs in the asanas.
Yeah.
It all has to be available in 5 different languages.
Right.
The whole point is to make it absolutely clear that including your fingerprints is conditional on your consent.
To eliminate any kind of accidental or uninformed enrollment.
Exactly.
That's a huge step, devoting state resources just to make sure consent is actually informed.
Yeah.
But what if someone agrees and then later has, let's call it privacy regret? Is there a way out?
There is. You absolutely have a right to delete, but it comes with a pretty big string attached.
Arches.
You can request the deletion of your fingerprints at any time.
Hmm.
But the moment you submit that request, any ID documents you hold, your ID card, your passport, they become void
Voided immediately.
immediately.
That is not a soft consequence. It's a powerful disincentive, even for someone who's really concerned about their privacy.
It is. It ties the integrity of your document directly to the integrity of the data in the database. If you delete your fingerprints, you have to go and reapply for new documents all over again.
Which triggers the mandatory collection process from scratch.
Right. It creates a kind of constant risk-reward calculation for the individual.
All right, let's shift from collection to protection. Because building a central database of faces and potentially millions of fingerprints makes it an incredibly attractive target. What are the core technical firewalls here?
The defense starts at the moment of collection. The law mandates that the biometric data has to be automatically encrypted the second it's collected.
So it's never just sitting there unprotected.
Never. It's a technical failsafe that renders the information basically unreadable to anyone except the authority, and even then only under very strict rules.
So encryption is layer one, but I think the most powerful defense is what the law calls the data separation mandate. Can you explain why that's so fundamental?
This is, I think, the genius of the architecture. The biometric database itself. It must be kept entirely separate, encrypted, and isolated from the main population registry.
Meaning?
The law explicitly forbids the database from containing your name, your address, or any other personal identifying details.
So if a hacker breaches the biometric database, all they get is a bunch of encrypted facial prints and fingerprints.
Exactly.
They have signatures, but no identities attached to them.
That's the perfect analogy. They steal a set of keys, but the doors are in a completely different, separately secured building. To link a biometric signature to a person, you'd need to pull off a second successful hack of the population registry and then get the permissions to actually correlate the two.
It prevents a single point of catastrophic failure.
Yes. It's security through, decentralizing the elements of your identity.
A very robust technical separation. What else? What other general security requirements are put on the authority?
The requirements are pretty comprehensive. They have to guarantee protection against any kind of leakage, hacking, unauthorized use, copying, you name it. And what's more, every single action taken inside that database must be meticulously documented.
Dogged.
Every query, every internal move, that documentation is what allows for external audit and supervision. It creates accountability.
And accountability needs someone to enforce it. The database is declared confidential, so who watches the watchman here?
Well, there are dedicated human roles. There's a supervisor of privacy protection, a unique position appointed specifically to oversee privacy within the database operations.
So their only job is to protect privacy.
Their sole task is ensuring the constraints of the law are upheld. And on top of that, you have the legislative branch. The Parliamentary Joint Knesset Committee for Biometric Applications gets regular reports, especially on security-related issues.
So it's a multi-layered system.
It really is. Technical encryption, physical separation, a dedicated privacy officer, and then parliamentary review on top.
Let's talk about that final firewall, law enforcement access. Because you'd think police would want to use this for investigations all the time, but their access it's tightly restricted.
Very. And the law makes a key distinction between a real-time comparison and getting access to the stored data.
Explain that.
So for immediate ID verification, say an officer finds someone unconscious or needs to identify a body or an ID check fails, they can take a biometric scan right there.
In the field.
Yes. And compare it against the database to get a simple yes or no match.
But the data they just collected for that comparison, it's transient, right? It doesn't get stored anywhere.
Absolutely. The biometric data the officer takes in the field is automatically deleted the instant the comparison result comes back. It's a temporary key for a single use, and then it's gone.
Okay, but what if the police or military police need to get into the main vault? For a serious criminal investigation, they need access to those long-term stored facial features or the optional fingerprints.
That is where they hit the rigid judicial barrier.
Sounds imposing.
It is. To get any of that stored data, they need a specific order from the district court, not just a simple warrant, a high-level judicial order.
And what's the standard? What does the court have to be convinced of to grant that order?
The bar is incredibly high. The court needs to be convinced, for special reasons they have to record, that the transfer is required for a very specific list of serious purposes, like investigating a felony or finding a missing person.
But even that's not enough, is it?
Not even close. This is the really interesting part. The law has a dual constraint.
Go on.
The court also must be convinced that there is a vital public interest that requires the transfer, and this is the kicker, that the purpose cannot be achieved in any other way.
Wow. The no other way clause. That means this database has to be the absolute last resort for an investigation.
Exactly. It prevents fishing expeditions. It ensures the judiciary, not law enforcement, maintains tight control over releasing this incredibly sensitive data.
But hang on a second. If the bar is set at vital public interest and you have to prove there's no other way, doesn't that make the stored data almost useless for most standard felony investigations? Isn't that practically just too high a bar?
And that seems to be exactly the legislative intent. The high bar is a feature, not a bug.
Hmm.
They wanted to build a system where identity integrity comes first, and its secondary use for law enforcement is severely, severely limited.
It forces investigators to do the work, to exhaust all the traditional routes first.
It does.
And what about the security services? GSS, Mossad, their needs are different.
They are. They're permitted access to fulfill their functions, but they operate under a different kind of firewall. It's not the public court system. Their access is regulated by separate, highly confidential procedures set by the Prime Minister's office.
So a different oversight structure for a different mission.
Right. It acknowledges their unique role, but still keeps them under a structured, high-level government mandate.
This whole framework is just. It's a masterclass in legal complexity. On one side, mandatory enrollment. You must submit your facial biometrics to get an ID. The state prioritizes that collective security.
But then this mandatory power is balanced by this incredible commitment to individual privacy, encryption, data separation, oversight.
And that intense judicial firewall for access.
And if you need a true measure of the stakes, just look at the penalties for breaking the rules.
What are they?
The unauthorized hacking of the database, illegally accessing information or doing anything unlawful with it, carries a penalty of up to 7 years imprisonment.
7 years? That's a serious felony.
It absolutely is. And just unlawfully disclosing the information gets you 5 years. The penalties are deliberately severe. It shows that this database is legally treated like a protected national asset, almost on par with national security secrets.
That really drives the point home. So our final thought for you to consider is this. When the state requires that the definitive key to your identity is held in a centralized vault, how does this rigid legal structure, the mandatory enrollment versus those massive judicial firewalls, change your personal calculation on where individual privacy ends and collective security begins?
Ponder that trade-off the next time you hold your ID card.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.